The 3Do Interactive Multiplayer is a video game console platform developed by the 3Do Company. Conceived by entrepreneur and Electronic Arts founder Trip Hawkins, the 3Do was not a console manufactured by the company itself, but a series of specifications, originally designed by Dave Needle and A.J. Michael of New Technologies Group, that could be licensed by third parties. Panasonic produced the first models in 1993, and further renditions of the hardware were released in 1994 by Sanyo and Goldstar. Despite a highly promoted launch and a host of cutting-edge technologies, the 3Do's high price, and an oversaturated console market prevented the system from achieving success comparable to veteran competitors Sega and Nintendo. Since its discontinuation in late 1996, the 3Do has been frequently derided by video game historians. History: The 3Do Interactive Multiplayer was originally conceived by the 3Do Company, founded in 1991 by Electronic Arts founder Trip Hawkins. The company's objective was to create a next-generation, CD-based video game entertainment standard which would be manufactured by various partners and licensees. 3Do would collect a royalty on each console sold and on each game manufactured. To game publishers, the low $3 royalty rate per game was a better deal than the higher royalties paid to Nintendo and Sega when making games for their consoles. The 3Do hardware itself was designed by Dave Needle and R.J. Michael, starting from an outline on a restaurant napkin in 1989. Trip Hawkins recalled, "I'd actually known those guys for a while and we are kindred spirits. And it turned out that they had already started working on designing a next-generation system and they had made some very important decisions that were the same decisions that I would have made. Rather than me start a brand new team and starting from scratch, it just made a lot of sense to join forces with them and shape what they were doing into what I wanted it to be." The 3Do Company lacked the resources to manufacture consoles themselves, and instead licensed the hardware to other companies for manufacturing. Trip Hawkins recounted that they approached every electronics manufacturer, but that their chief targets were Sony and Panasonic, the two largest consumer electronics companies in the world. However, Sony had already begun development on their own console, the PlayStation, and ultimately decided to continue work on it rather than sign with 3Do. Panasonic launched a 3Do with its FZ1 model in 1993, though Goldstar and Sanyo would later manufacture the 3Do as well. Licensing to independent manufacturers made the system extremely expensive. The manufacturers had to make a profit on the hardware itself, whereas most major game console manufacturers, such as Sega and Sony, sold their systems at a loss, with expectations of making up for the loss with software sales. Some sources claim that 3Do was priced at $699, far above competing game systems and aimed at high-end users and early adopters. Hawkins has argued that 3Do was launched at $599, and not higher myths that are often reported. In a later interview, Hawkins clarified that while the suggested retail price was $699, few retailers sold the system at that price. Goldstar, Sanyo, and Panasonic's later models were less expensive to manufacture than the FZ1 and were sold for considerably lower prices. For example, the Goldstar model launched at $399. In addition, after 6 months on the market, the price of the FZ1 had dropped to $499, leading some to contend that the 3Do's cost was not as big a factor in its market failure as is usually claimed. The launch of the platform in October 1993 received a great deal of attention in the press as part of the multimedia wave in the computer world at the time. Return Fire, Road Rush, FIFA International Soccer, and Jurassic Park Interactive had been slated for launch releases but were pushed to mid-1994 due to the developers' struggles with the then cutting-edge hardware. The only 3Do software available at launch was the third-party game Crash and Burn. Price drops announced in February 1996 were perceived in the industry to be an effort to improve market penetration before the release of the promised successor to 3Do, the M2. Heavy promotional efforts on the YTV variety show It's Alive and a stream of hinted product expandabilities supported that idea. Eventually, however, the M2 project was scrapped altogether. The 3DO system was eventually discontinued at the end of 1996 with a complete shutdown of all internal hardware development and divestment of the M2 technology. 3DO restructured themselves around this same time, repositioning their internal software development house as a multi-platform company supporting the PlayStation, Sega Saturn, and computer platforms. The higher quality of later CD-ROM-based systems that emerged in the mid-90s, the uneven quality of the games, and the initial high price point are all considered to be among the many issues that led to the 3DO's demise. Variants. Due to the licensing method employed by 3DO, a number of different manufacturers produced the 3DO system for the market. The Panasonic versions are the best known and most common. Panasonic FZ1 REAL. 3DO Interactive Multiplayer Euro. The first 3DO system, which was initially priced at $699.99 in the US. The price was later reduced to $399.99 in the fall of 1994. Panasonic FZ10 REAL. 3DO Interactive Multiplayer Euro released a year or two after the FZ1. It is a less expensive, slimmer and lighter model and replaced the FZ1 in Panasonic's portfolio. The FZ10 featured a top-loading CD tray, an internal memory manager and repositioned the LEDs and controller port. The controller is also smaller and lighter than the one included with the FZ1, but lacks a headphones output. Panasonic ROBO 3DO Euro FZ1 custom console, fitted with a 5-disc CD drive. Gold Star 3DO Interactive Multiplayer Euro. The Gold Star GD0101M unit, released a year after the FZ1, is similar in physical appearance to the Panasonic model. However, due to hardware differences and file processing limitations, incompatibilities with some games were reported. Sanyo 3 Turkish New Lira Do Interactive Multiplayer Euro. The Tri is the rarest of all 3DO systems and was only released in Japan in medium quantities before the whole 3DO system disappeared. Creative 3DO Blaster Euro. A PCIe expansion card with a double-speed CD-ROM drive and one controller that enables compatible Windows-based PCs to play 3DO games. Produced by Creative Labs. Hardware. The original edition of the console, the FZ1, was referred to in full as the 3DO Real Interactive Multiplayer. The console had advanced hardware features at the time, an ARM 6032-bit RISC CPU, 2 custom video coprocessors, a custom 16-bit DSP and a custom math coprocessor. It also featured 2 MB of RAM, 1 MB of VRAM, and a double-speed CD-ROM drive for main CD plus GS or photo CDs. The 3DO included the first light synthesizer in a game console, converting CD music to a mesmerizing color pattern. The 3DO is one of few CD-based units that feature neither regional lockout nor copy protection, making it easy to use pirated software. Although there is no regional lockout present in any 3DO machine, a few Japanese games cannot be played on non-Japanese 3DO consoles due to a special kanji font which English-language consoles could not read. Games that have compatibility issues include Sword and Sorcery, the adult video game Twinkle Nights and a demo version of Alone in the Dark. Technical specifications: processor, 32-bit 12.5 MHz RISC CPU, custom math coprocessor, 32 KB RAM. Display, resolution 640A, 480, 320A, 240/60 Hz for NTSC version, and 768A, 576, 384A, 288/50 Hz for PAL version with either 16-bit palletized color or 24-bit true color. 2 accelerated video coprocessors capable of producing 9 million pixels per second, distorted, scaled, rotated and texture mapped. System board, 50 MB per second bus speed, 36 DMA channels, 2 MB of main RAM, 1 MB of VRAM, 2 expansion ports, sound, 16-bit stereo sound, 44.1 kHz sound sampling rate, supports Dolby surround sound, custom 20-bit digital signal processor, a Euro 20-bit accumulator with 16-bit parameter registers for extended precision, media, double-speed 300 KB per second data transfers CD-ROM drive with 32 KB RAM buffer, multitasking 32-bit operating system, connectivity, audio and video, RF switch and RF connector can be used with older TVs that lack direct video inputs. The 3DO output is compatible with most existing video console switches, including those made for the NES, Sega Master System Genesis, and NEC TurboGrafx-RF. This provides a relatively low-quality but universally compatible video signal. Composite Rca. The 3DO features standard composite video and audio ports that are compatible with off-the-shelf cables also used on DVD players and certain other video devices and games consoles, as well as older computer video monitors. S-Video. Except for the Gold Star GD0101M model, the 3DO also offers an S-Video connector for enhanced picture quality on more advanced televisions. Power. All 3DO consoles have integrated power supplies. Some models have hardwired power cords, others use an IECC7P figure-8 power cord. All North American model specifications are AC 120V 60 Hz 30W. Basic accessories. Among the accessories shipped standard with most 3DO systems were AV and power cables along with one standard controller. The 3DO controllers were unique in that the system base unit contained only one controller port and the controllers could be physically daisy-chained together via a port on the back of each controller. Up to 8 controllers could be linked together in this fashion. All controllers for each 3DO console are compatible with one another. In addition, standard 3DO controllers released with the Panasonic FZ1 also contained a headphone jack and volume control for silent play. The Gold Star model also included a controller with this feature. Third-party controllers were produced by a number of companies including Logitech Light Gun. The only light gun ever released for the 3DO was the Game Gun, a product of third-party developer American Laser Games. Despite this, no fewer than 10 games with light gun support were produced for the system. Most of these were arcade ports from American Laser Games, but Virgin Interactive and Digital Pictures also released 3DO light gun games. The 3DO Game Gun uses the same design as the Game Gun released for the Sega CD, an orange Old West revolver. Select Game Guns house a controller port so that another Game Gun may be daisy-chained for two-player gaming, which is supported in most of American Laser Games' 3DO titles. Though no light gun was released for the 3DO in Japan, the Japanese localizations of Demolition Man and Corpse Killer retain light gun support, and could be played by Japanese gamers using imported Game Guns. Mouse. Panasonic and Logitech both released the 3DO mouse. The Panasonic FZJM1 and Logitech 3DO mouse are identical aside from their markings. Fewer than 20 games supported its use, some of which were optimized for the standard controller or light gun rather than the mouse. Of the 3DO games which were optimized for use with the mouse, the most well-known are Mice and Lemmings. The Panasonic mouse was also bundled with Konami's Palisa Notes limited edition in Japan, which came with a Palisa Notes mouse pad. Steering wheel. Home arcade systems released a steering wheel for the 3DO which is supported by several racing titles, including the Need for Speed. FZEM256 3DO Memory Expansion Unit. The Panasonic FZEM256 is a 256 KB expandable memory unit that plugs into the 3DO expansion bay on the back of the console. Released in 1994 and sold in Japan only, but is compatible with all models. It came with a storage manager startup disk that is required to use the unit. FZAK1 3DO Karaoke Mixer. The Panasonic 3DO Karaoke Mixer allows 3DO owners to play a standard music CD, turn the vocals down, plug in one or two microphones and sing over the music. This unit was not released in all markets. Games. Some of the best received titles were ports of arcade or PC games that other cartridge-based systems of the time were not capable of playing, such as Alone in the Dark, Mice and Star Control 2. Other popular titles included Total Eclipse, Jurassic Park Interactive, Gex, Crash and Burn, Slayer, Killing Time, The Need for Speed, Road Rash, and A Mercenary. The 3D version of arcade title Samurai Shodown was the only port with faithful graphics for some time, and the 3D Super Street Fighter II Turbo was the first and arguably the best port with its CD-quality audio. Since its release coincided with the arrival of the modern first-person shooter, the 3D also had some of the earliest members of the genre as exclusives, such as Escape from Monster Manor, the previously mentioned Killing Time, and Powered, as well as ports of Wolfenstein 3D and Doom. However, the 3D library also exhibited less successful aspects of home gaming at the time. It was launched at the dawn of CD-ROM gaming, and early titles on 3D frequently attempted to use interactive movie-style gameplay. Such titles rendered all or nearly all of their graphics in full-motion video, which necessitated that any interactive influence from the player be limited to a greater extent than other games of the time. Some games followed a single unfolding of events simply by correctly timed prompts executed by the player. Night Trap, Mad Dog McCree, and The Daedalus Encounter are some of the more notorious titles from this era. Also, digital video was of very low quality at the time, especially on low-cost consumer devices. Due to the 3D struggles on the market, the game series The Need for Speed and Gex were moved to more popular platforms like the PlayStation and Windows. However, the 3D hit Return Fire achieved only limited success with its re-releases. A bolted successor, the 3D company designed a next-generation console that was never released due to various business and technological issues. The M2 project, which began as an accelerator add-on for the 3D, was to use dual-power PC602 processors in addition to newer 3D and video rendering technologies. Late during development, the company abandoned the console hardware business and sold the M2 technology to Matsushita. While Matsushita initially claimed to be planning a game console with the technology, it was shortly thereafter rebranded for the kiosk market, competing with the CDI system. Konami later made an M2-based arcade board. Games ran straight from the CD-ROM drive, causing long load times and a high failure rate due to the CD-ROM being continuously in use. Market competition: video game, Commodore Amiga 1200, Commodore Amiga CD32, NEC PC Engine with Super CD-ROM expansion, Nintendo's SNES, Sega Mega Drive with Mega CD expansion, Atari Jaguar, video game, Sega Saturn, Sony's PlayStation, High-End AV, Commodore's CD-TV, Philips CDI, Pioneer's LaserActive, Tandy Video Information System, Reception. The 3D was awarded Worst Console Launch of 1993 by Electronic Gaming Monthly. In a special Game Machine Cross review in May 1995, Famicom Zarshin would score the 3D Real Console a 26 out of 40. Citing a lack of decent exclusives and an astronomical asking price, in 2009 video game website IGN chose the 3D as its 22nd greatest video game console of all time, slightly higher than the Atari Jaguar but lower than its four other major competitors, the SNES, the Sega Genesis, the PlayStation, and the Sega Saturn. On Yahoo! Games, the 3D was placed among the top 5 worst console launches due to its one-game launch lineup and high launch price. Gaming retrospectives have also frequently accused the 3D of having an abundance of poor-quality interactive movies. Trip Hawkins' business model for selling 3D was widely derided by industry figures. Emulation: 4D is working on a 3D emulator based on the FreeDo source code. Most games are now playable with minor issues. 1. See also, 1993 in video games, 3D rating system, list of 3D games, Panasonic Jungle, references. External links, 3D at DMOZ. This article is based on material taken from the free online dictionary of computing prior to November 1, 2008 and incorporated under the relicensing terms of the GFDL, version 1.3 or later.